You've written a prompt that covers exactly what you want. The task is clear, the wording is fine. You hit send, and what comes back sounds professional, organized, and completely disconnected from your actual situation. The output could have been written for anyone, which means it wasn't really written for you. That's a context problem. And once you understand what's actually happening inside the model when context is missing, you'll know exactly why it produces that result and how to change it. This is the pattern most people follow. They have something that needs doing, they describe the task clearly, they send the prompt. The task is there, the situation surrounding the task is completely invisible to the model. AI has no idea who you're managing, what kind of team you're dealing with, what the history is, what the stakes are, or what a good outcome actually looks like for your specific circumstances. None of that is in the prompt. And when something is missing, the model fills the gap on its own, using the most statistically common version of what you ask for. The output looks reasonable, it sounds professional, but it fits no one in particular, which means it isn't calibrated to you. To understand why context matters, you need to understand what AI is doing when it responds. Every response is a pattern match. The model looks at your input and selects the most statistically likely continuation based on everything it was trained on. When your prompt is specific and context rich, the pool of matching patterns is narrow. The output is precise because fewer patterns fit. When your prompt is vague or context free, the pool is wide. The model defaults to the most common version of what you asked for, the average across every situation that resembles yours. That average applies to many situations, which means it's calibrated to none of them. This is the same pattern completion mechanism from the earlier videos. Context is another way of narrowing the pool. That's the whole mechanism. What makes this tricky is that AI won't tell you something is missing. There's no follow-up, there's no clarification request, there's no flag that says the prompt left out something important. The model works with what you gave it, and it fills every gap automatically, using the statistical average as a substitute. Then it delivers that answer with complete confidence. And that's the part that catches people. The output looks authoritative. It sounds like the model knew what it was doing. But underneath that confident surface, every gap you left in the prompt became an assumption in the output. You just can't see where the assumptions are because the answer doesn't label them. When people hear add more context, they often think the goal is a longer prompt, more words, more explanation, more detail for its own sake. The actual goal is different. Each piece of context you add removes patterns from the pool that don't fit your situation. You're shrinking the set of possible matches, not padding the answer. The output gets more precise because fewer patterns remain that could plausibly apply. Context and specificity are doing different jobs here. Specificity shapes the format and the task. Context shapes the situation. A specific prompt with no context still gives the model half the picture it needs. When AI receives a prompt, it's pattern matching against three things it needs to produce a useful response: who is involved, and what is the relationship to this situation. Not just my team, but who these people are, what their history is, what they care about. What is the actual situation? Not the task you want completed, but the circumstances surrounding it. What has happened? What's about to happen? What's at stake? What are the constraints? What does a good answer need to work within to actually be useful in your specific context? When those three things are present, the model has what it needs. When any of them are missing, the model fills them in, and you don't get to choose how. Generic output is the easy one to miss because it isn't bad output. It's organized, professional, and the kind of thing you could send. The problem is that it's also untailored and disconnected from your actual situation, which means you end up doing the translation yourself, taking the general output and adapting it to your specific circumstances. Every time you do that translation, you introduce interpretation. Interpretation is where the message drifts from what you actually needed towards something close, but not quite right. The work the model could have done up front comes back to you on the back end. And here's what that looks like with a prompt. Write an email to my team about the upcoming schedule change. That prompt names a task. It describes what you want. It's clear. But look at what the model doesn't know. How many people are on this team? What's the schedule change and why is it happening? What's the emotional temperature around it? Are people going to be surprised? Is this welcome news or difficult news? The model reaches into its training and finds the most common workplace schedule change email pattern. It produces something that looks like the right kind of email, uses the right register, has the right structure. But it has none of your situation in it. None of the specific detail that would make the email actually useful for your team on this day about this particular change. There's two versions of the same task coming up. The first prompt has no context. The model's working entirely from assumptions about what a schedule change email typically looks like. The second prompt has full context. Same task, completely different starting conditions. Watch what changes in the output. Specifically, what the model decides to include, how it opens, and what it addresses directly. The stronger prompt is longer, but length is the side effect of giving the model what it needs. What matters is what the context eliminates from the pool of possible responses. The weak prompt. Write an email to my team about the upcoming schedule change. The output. Hi team, I wanted to give you a heads up that we will be making some changes to our schedule in the coming weeks. More details will be shared soon. Please reach out if you have any questions. Thanks. Read that carefully. The grammar is fine, the tone is professional, there's no team size, no description of the actual change, no acknowledgement that might affect people's lives outside of work, no reason given, no concrete next step. The model produced a polished placeholder. It looks like an email, it functions like a holding pattern. A manager who sent that would still have all the real communication work ahead of them because the model filled every unknown with the safest possible average. Here's the strong prompt. I manage a 12-person customer support team at a regional insurance company. We're shifting from a Monday through Friday 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. schedule to a rotating shift model that includes weekends starting in 3 weeks. 2 team members already know, the rest do not. Some have been here for years and value their predictability. Write an email that acknowledges this is a significant change, explains the business reason without overpromising, and gives them a clear next step to ask questions before the schedule is finalized. The output begins. Hi team, I have some news about our schedule that I want to share directly with you. Starting in 3 weeks, we are moving to a rotating shift model that will include weekend coverage. I know this is a meaningful change, especially for those of you who have built your routines around our current hours. And it goes on. But listen to the opening line. I have some news I want to share directly with you. That isn't generic. That's a manager addressing people they know about something that matters to them. The model arrived at that tone because the prompt told it who these people were and what they were about to hear. The context didn't just change the words, it changed the entire starting position. Here's exactly what each piece of context did. Team size eliminated generic broadcast phrasing. When the model knows it's writing to 12 specific people, the language shifts from announcement mode to direct address. The register becomes human instead of corporate. Emotional stakes activated acknowledgement. I know this is a meaningful change, appeared in the output because the prompt made clear that this news would land with weight for some people. The model couldn't have written that line without knowing it. The timeline and next step produced a concrete, actionable close. The prompt specified that people needed a way to ask questions before the schedule was finalized. The output delivered exactly that. Without those details, the output would have ended with something vague and open ended. Same task, a completely different match, because the context narrowed the pattern pool down to the response that actually fit the situation. So here's the principle to carry forward. Every unknown in your prompt becomes an assumption in the output. Every assumption is a place where the model substitutes the statistical average for your reality. The more unknowns you leave, the further the output drifts from your actual situation. Your job is to eliminate the unknowns that matter for this specific task. And that last part is where your judgment is irreplaceable. Dumping everything you know into a prompt creates noise. Context that isn't relevant to the task dilutes the signal rather than sharpening it. What you're looking for is focused, purposeful context, the details that are actually load bearing for the response you need. Identifying those requires knowing your situation. Only you have that information, and the model is waiting for you to share it. Before you hit send, ask yourself, what does AI need to know about my actual situation that it couldn't possibly assume? Answer that question inside the prompt. Whatever comes to mind: team size, the history behind the situation, the emotional stakes, the constraints, the timeline, the relationship between the people involved. If it's relevant, put it in. The goal is fewer assumptions in the output. When you make this a habit, you'll notice that outputs requiring 2 or 3 rounds of revision start landing closer on the first attempt. The model didn't get smarter. You stopped making it guess. Context is one of those things that seems obvious in hindsight and invisible until it clicks. Most people aren't withholding it on purpose. They don't realize the model needs it, or they haven't thought through which details are actually load bearing for the task. Now you have the mechanism. You know what the model is doing with the gaps you leave. You know how to close them purposefully. That understanding transfers to every prompt you write from here forward across every task this series will ever specifically cover. If this video helped, subscribe so you can catch the next one. And if you want to work through how your business can use AI more effectively, reach out to us at Eau Claire AI over at eauclaireai.com. And thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.